Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. I've got Lily on set again today, and she's been a very good girl. And today I am going to discuss Pearl in the Mist. Now, before I get started, I just want to say, as I'm working my way through all the series, which I plan to continue to do because I'm just having such a great time reading these books, is I will have tons and tons of spoilers in this video. Okay, so just so you know, Lily's making sounds. When she sneezes like that, that means that she wants me to pay attention to her, which always happens when I start to make a video, just have to say. You may have seen my video, and this is part of my V.C. Andrews playlist, where I did all of my V.C. Andrews collection, and I've added to that collection since then. I plan to do all of the series, read them and discuss them, and double up on some of the books because it's a lot. But I tell you, I had been zipping through this one, and I really love this series because it takes place in New Orleans. New Orleans has been on my mind. It's one of my favorite cities. It's a very unique place and a very special place in a lot of ways. And I think that Andrew Neiderman, who wrote these books, did a wonderful job in really capturing the essence of that city and that area in the bayou. A lot of it takes place around that area where we have the Cajuns from the bayou and their kind of lower status socially, on the social status, at least in the world of these books. Like all of these V.C. Andrews books, there's not like a specific time period, and I like that about it. And even the movies, which I'll be discussing, gets into that too, where I think they do mention, oh, it's 1962, but they don't, which I think is the first time I'd ever heard an exact date being thrown out. But the costumes and the decor isn't exactly on point for that period, but it doesn't really matter. It's kind of in its own world. But they gratefully, and I'm glad about this, avoid things like referencing to, let's say, like John Kennedy assassination or anything like current events, because it's very much in its own world that's old-fashioned. You know, and these were written in the 80s and then going into the 90s. Luckily, we're not in a world of computers and cell phones, because I don't think I could handle it. But anyway, let's get started on this lovely book, Pearl in the Mist. This book, oh, I don't have it with me, but because I actually used it. This book came with its own bookmark attached to the back. I've seen a few of these V.C. Andrews that have done that, and that's just like a little extra special feeling with these books that have these wonderful step back covers. I really love this. So I was very grateful that a few people had commented on my last video about Ruby, that when I mentioned, oh, the actress playing Ruby and Giselle, they really did a good job. And then it was pointed out that those are a set of twins, Regina. Okay, that explains it. The actresses' names are Raquel, I think that's how you pronounce it, and Karina Bano, and they're really good. While I've been reading the book, I've been envisioning those actresses playing the roles of Ruby and Giselle. I love stories about twins and evil sisters. I wonder why. This one just hit me in every possible sweet spot, and I loved it. And I have to say, at the end of this book, when I understood what the title meant and what it referred to, I cried. I cried. And any book that can make me cry or evoke any kind of strong emotion in me, I love. That's why I read. And I don't know, I just love this kind of melodrama. But let's get into it. Like I said, lots of spoilers, so I warned you. So at the end of Ruby, the first book, Giselle, her mean, I wouldn't even say evil, because I do think in some ways Giselle is a sympathetic character. She has depth, you know, so you can, at least I found her to be evil, but like I felt for her sometimes. Like, for example, when she gets into the car accident and ends up in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down. So again, we have our V.C. Andrews character, our wheelchair-bound character, which is a trope that you see in, well, I think almost all the series that I've read so far. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of anyone that didn't have one. So continuing, I'm wondering if this trend will continue. But anyway, so I do feel bad for Giselle. And we have, the similar V.C. Andrews bingo we've got the cold, elegant but cold and mean stepmother with her brushed back. She's always talking about the brushed back blonde hair and pinned up hair. And I love the description of the clothes, and I love the clothes in the movie. Just perfect. So Ruby and Giselle's father, Pierre, is kind of, again, that weak-willed character, and Daphne, the wife, is really the dominant battle axe. And she decides to send the girls, Giselle and Ruby, to this exclusive girls' school called Greenwood. And of course, you've got to have your mean school mistress, Miss Ironwood. Gotta love that name. So the girls settle in, and Giselle, even from her wheelchair, starts running the show and just being the queen bee of the girls' dorm room, and kind of takes over, and she has her little clique of girls that wait on her hand and foot. So Giselle decides she doesn't want to room with Ruby because there's a lot of tension between them. So Ruby gets this lovely roommate called Abby. Abby is part black, but she passes for white. They use a term that I've only heard down south, and I'm sure it's considered very offensive now, which is a quadroon, which is like quarter black. It was like a thing in Louisiana with the rich landowners would have their quadroon mistress. As I've read in books, now I don't know how much of this is true, but in the movie, they kind of avoid that offensive term and call her a half-breed, which is equally offensive. I think that's when they mentioned in the movie this was 1962, which would make sense in the South with segregation. Abby confesses this to Ruby, and somehow Giselle finds out, of course. And she does something really horrible. It's almost like a scene out of Carrie, where she exposes her at the dance as the queen of the dance, and none of the boys are going to dance with her because of her racial makeup. It's really an ugly scene, and very dramatic. And Abby runs off into the night, but she's okay. But it's a very heartfelt scene, and it's done in the movie too. It's not quite as dramatic in the film, but I really thought the girl playing Abby was stunning and a good actress. In fact, all the performances in this one were really good. And I was surprised to see Marilu Henner play Mrs. Ironwood. In fact, I knew her face, but I couldn't quite place it. And then I looked it up. So yeah, she was really good and appropriately mean. So the new students are invited to the founder of Greenwood, who's this very kind of cold, older lady, and her mansion. They have their little tea. And while they're there, Ruby kind of wanders around the house, and she hears this incredible music, piano music coming from one of the upstairs rooms, and she follows the sound, and she meets the pianist, and his name is Louis Turnbull, who is the grandson of the founder, and he's also blind. But they have immediately this connection, and he starts asking Ruby to come back to visit him. So she makes this connection with this young man. He's like around 30. So there's kind of this romance blossoming, but at some point it definitely gets really weird. He has like hysterical blindness, and the reason is because it's very Oedipal. I mean, right down to the blindness. His mother was like abusing him. It doesn't really go into the full details of that. I feel like that's going to come back maybe in the last book. I'm not sure, but it sounds like it's something that might. Anyway, the husband ended up killing the mother in front of Louis, and this is what made him go blind. It was very, very sordid. And then what made it even worse was that he's almost like a Norman Bates kind of character, where he's like wants Ruby to like touch him the way his mother once did. Girls, if you're ever on a date and a guy says, I want you to touch me the way my mother did, just run. I mean, I feel bad for him, but it's like, no, that's too much. This is where it gets into the, we always have to have some kind of incest theme going on in a V.C. Andrews book. This one I found particularly like gross and cringy. It's one thing to have a hot brother, but no. I didn't really like Louis. Like, I just found his character really annoying because he was like, let me touch you so I can read your features. Oh, sorry. Like that kind of thing. Ruby's naive about a lot of things because she and Bo get it on a few times, and it's like, didn't you ever pay attention in biology class and know anything about birth control? Because you know what's coming. So yes, she does get pregnant. She gets pregnant. Before that, she's accused of sleeping with Buck. So that's a big mystery. And there's a little bit of like a trial drama going on in this too. And then she's also kind of accused of, well, her art teacher, Miss Stevens, is kind of pulled into it. And there's some kind of rumor that, oh, Miss Stevens is a lesbian and all this stuff. She gets kicked out of the school. Ruby discovers that Giselle is not really paralyzed. She's been faking it, maybe not the whole time, but for a while. She can walk, and she was the one running off in the middle of the night to fool around with Buck. And Ruby was with Lewis, learning things about his mother, I guess. But Lewis actually comes into the courtroom. Well, it's like a hearing at the school, an expulsion hearing, and gives Ruby her alibi, and the whole thing is kind of let go. But then the roller coaster drama just continues, because now the father, Pierre, dies suddenly. The girls have to go back and deal with Daphne, who hates them. And she now has a new boyfriend who's moving in, and he's real sleazy with Ruby. And then Ruby gets pregnant, finds out she's pregnant. She tries, of course, to reach out to Bo, her great love, Bo. Daphne conspires with his parents to just like get him out of the country. And Daphne's like, get him out of the country, I'll take care of it. This little Cajun slut is not going to ruin my family. So she arranges for Ruby to have this like back alley abortion. Ruby, it's a very dramatic scene. And Ruby goes to this nasty clinic and sees how horrible it is and just is like, no, this is wrong, this is wrong. She runs out and goes back to the bayou, to her little shack. And then there is this hilarious scene, and it was a little bit contrived, I have to say. And I noticed that in the movie they didn't quite do this scene, they just talked about it. Graham Pierre is drunk and running through the swamp naked and drowns. That got rid of him. Paul shows up. Now, you may recall, Paul is her half-brother, Paul Tate. They were in love as young teens, but now they had to go their separate ways. So Paul is kind of like the Chris character in Flowers in the Attic. He's just completely in love with Ruby, dedicated to her beyond reason, and he offers to marry her, to take care of her, because she's lost everything. She's pregnant, she's alone, she's like 17 years old, living in the shack, impoverished. All that she has, maybe her art talents and the skills that she learned from her Grandmere. So she kind of goes, by going back to her roots, she's kind of getting back in touch with Grandmere's spirit. And the book ends, and this is what made me cry, with her giving birth to her child in the middle of a huge hurricane, like we're having now. And Paul's there with her. The shack is being torn apart by the winds. The roof's flying off. The windows are smashing. And she has her beautiful little daughter called Pearl. And that is Pearl in the Mist. And of course, I should have seen that one coming. But when it was revealed, I just sobbed. I was so moved. It was so beautiful. And that is how Pearl in the Mist ends. I watched the movie. I'm watching all of them after I read each book. I really loved this one. I thought it was done really well. It hit all of the key points. And again, the ladies who are playing Ruby and Giselle are just wonderful. So let me know in the comments below if you've been watching these movies on Lifetime or reading the series. I would love to hear your thoughts. So I will be doing the next book in the series very soon. So until then, thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye.